Welcome to the Blue Cafe. We offer stories of infidelity, betrayal, and redemption. Please like and subscribe. Cheers. Now, on to today's story. Polyamory gone wrong. Need support. For sake of clarity, I'll use names, but they're all fake names. This may seem like the wrong submission, but it feels right to me. However, the amount of text I wrote seems to be too long for one post, so I will post about 1/3 of it and the rest in the comments, marked with A2 and A3 at the beginning. In January 2020, my wife of 15 years Janet and I got into a fight. It started as an argument and escalated to her attacking me physically, and me restraining her from attacking, which made things worse. I was so much in shock that the only way I could think of to de-escalate was to send my son to get the neighbours to intervene while I continued to hold her. For clarity, I clenched my own wrists tightly behind her back, but did not apply pressure or force to her body, if that makes any difference to anyone. I thought I was doing the right thing. Opinions differ as to which lines were crossed by whom, but she equivocates me putting my arms around her with rape, and for her, that was the night our relationship broke. Concurrently, Janet was trying to set up one of her friends with a recent acquaintance in a three-way chat group. Kyle wasn't interested in the girl, but they all kept talking, and slowly he started having tender feelings toward my wife, and she developed mutual feelings, which she became aware of on the 6th of March. She became intensely sad, often staring blankly around the room but unable to talk about whatever was bothering her any time I asked, which was frequent. On the 22nd of March, I became reacquainted with someone from my childhood, Melinda, who had started posting poetry on Facebook. I was one of few people to take interest, and we discussed ways to make her writing more impactful. That developed into a friendship, and I agreed to help her with her manuscript. Reading it was intensely intimate, a bit more like reading a diary than a book of poetry. It felt equally thrilling and inappropriate to access someone's inner thoughts through their writing. It was like a psychosexual connection with virtually a complete stranger. As I got to know her through her writing and through our conversations, I learned about the many people in her life who had victimized her, and I was filled with compassion to help her. It was the perfect combination of my hero complex and her narcissism, which I knew nothing about. I wanted to know her better, and she took an interest in me as well, and there was an immediate bond between us. She asked me many deeply personal questions, even inappropriate questions which made me uncomfortable, but I liked the attention. I made it clear, however, that I wasn't going to have any sort of fling or affair or cheat on Janet. For better or for worse, I had a strong belief in and respect for the sanctity of marriage and the vows I swore. As time progressed and feelings grew more intense, I remembered hearing about polyamory and the idea that a person could have multiple meaningful relationships with several people who each fill a niche in someone's soul, rather than expecting one person to be the only relationship and holding them responsible for filling all the niches. I began a series of conversations with Janet about these concepts and articulated areas in our relationship where some wishes were unmet, and how it might be worth considering redefining the terms of our relationship and what we would consider disloyalty towards one another with regards to our external friendships and relationships. For me, it was clear, cheating didn't mean having an external relationship, it meant breaking an agreement made between husband and wife about acceptable conduct, and using deception to conceal a relationship or the activities within that relationship. Not cheating meant having good open communication and discussing everything in advance and coming to an agreement on what is okay or not okay. Basically, I had just a few guiding principles. We honor our spouse by asking permission and coming to agreement before taking any action with an external partner. Our marriage relationship takes preeminence. Nothing is okay unless we are okay. As soon as someone feels they have to be sneaky, that is a sign that they are doing something they shouldn't do and have a guilty conscience, which needs to be corrected before progressing further. These conversations allowed her to feel comfortable finally telling me about her feelings for Kyle, and in return, I told her of my growing feelings for Melinda. Both of them were several thousand miles away, so we figured, no problem. We gave each other permission to engage with our new friends and explore these new feelings, and for a while, everything was great. I openly shared with Janet details of my conversations and how I felt about Melinda, and we had what polyamorists call new relationship energy. At one point I said that primarily, I wanted Janet to be happy, and that as long as things were great between us, I could possibly even be okay with her having sex with someone else. All along the way, I kept asking Janet about her feelings regarding my interactions with Melinda, how she would feel if our conversation were affectionate or flirtatious, etc. And every time I asked, the response was the same: "You're fine, I don't mind, don't give me details, go be happy." Towards the end of June, Janet asked to use my phone, and it made me really nervous that she might see a message pop up or read my conversation with Melinda, and in a moment of panic, I deleted the conversation from a different device. I immediately realized it was a mistake, showing I felt I needed to hide something and thus, not in accordance with my philosophy of open and honest communication. I confessed to deleting the conversation and offered to open Melinda's account so she could read everything, just to prove that I had nothing to hide and to restore trust, but Janet was devastated by directly seeing in detail what I thought she had vaguely known all along. Nothing explicit, but lots of emotional connection. That resulted in several months of a platonic stage. The platonic phase ended in maybe August, when Janet told me she could no longer consider me her husband, but could consider us friends with benefits. Towards the end of that time, my relationship with Melinda disintegrated overnight, and I felt devastated and utterly lonely. Janet hadn't been able to admit it, but each time I asked her permission to engage with Melinda, she had told me yes but meant no. She was hurt that I would even ask, and took it as evidence that I didn't love her anymore. She was extremely hurt by all the things she had agreed to allow and had indicated would not hurt her, and now that I was in agony, she had no capacity to show me the support and affection I craved. She told me many times, directly and unambiguously, that she could not give me what I needed and instructed me to find someone who could. That was the beginning of what I call my others period, between October 2020 and May 2021. What the hell did I just read? Y'all went from unresolved physical violence to some awful open relationship, and y'all are surprised it didn't work? There's only one real victim here. That's your son who had to live this nonsense. Y'all suck as parents and life partners. Get the hell away from each other immediately and stop traumatizing your child. Y'all both have serious issues that make neither of you relationships worthy. You tried to paint yourself in the best light, but everyone sucks here. Thanks for the laugh, I felt the same way. This was a train wreck to begin with, and it just got worse. Why even be married at that point? SMH. The post history indicates prevalent drug use as well, which paints even more of a picture of a very unstable environment. Woman face palming their poor child. I know. I kept thinking about the son who had to witness his parents' physical fight and run to the neighbors for help. You know, the poor kid is not being spared any of these details. Anyone who likes to talk this much about himself is not thinking about his kid or anyone else. So your poly marriage didn't start out from a super healthy marriage, your communication sucked and you both ignored the way too few rules that you set up. And now you wonder why everything goes south? Seriously, you both should have divorced or at least separated after she physically assaulted you. You had to hold her and she felt raped by you. How could anyone think that after something like that happened, that it is a good idea to open the marriage? I mean, you didn't open it right away, you both cheated on each other emotionally first and then opened it after you confessed to each other that you had feelings for someone else. In summary, you did everything wrong you could. Both of you. And now, after more cheating, more bad communication and more crossed boundaries, you entertain the idea to keep on being poly? Learn from your past, look back and see this for what it is. This is a pure disaster. Nothing else. She doesn't care about you and you haven't cared for her for a super long time. Don't repeat history now and make the same mistakes again. Separate from each other, talk about divorce and meet with a lawyer. Give her and yourself the chance to take a step back and to collect yourself. You both need to get back to the basics individually and separated. Learn to communicate, learn what healthy boundaries are and how to respect them and how to demand from your partner to respect them. Learn that there must be consequences when a boundary is crossed so that the boundary doesn't become meaningless. And most of all, stop hurting each other all the time. Separate, divorce and then start from scratch. Just to go point by point. I would disagree with your assessment. I think our marriage was in great shape when we started talking about expanding our definition of the bounds of our relationship. I also disagree that our communication sucked, at least in the first year or so. We talked in detail daily and nightly. I am perhaps guilty of over-communication because it was so important to me that we do all we can to minimize unnecessary suffering and maximize our enjoyment of our lives individually as well as our marriage. Too few rules? What would you have suggested I add? And no, only she ignored them. For me, they are practically core beliefs. She may not care for me like she used to, but she does care. And I never stopped loving her. I agree, establishing and enforcing boundaries is crucially important. Let's stick to your point system. She attacked you physically and you couldn't stop her, even had to call your son to get the neighbors to help. Your marriage wasn't in great shape. Your communication sucked. She told you herself that every time when she said yes to something you asked for, she hurt inside. And when she finally told you this, you didn't work it out and instead you looked for your next partner. She on the other hand started her affair without ever talking to you. Is that what good communication looks like for you? Only she ignored the rules. What about when you quickly deleted the messages from your first lover when your wife asked for your phone? In that moment you effectively broke your rule too. Sure, you later came clean to her but in the end you broke it. Next is, after she told you the first time that she in fact hurt every time when she agreed to something before, you ignored that just because the consequence meant that you couldn't do the stuff you enjoyed so much. You ignored the rules just as much as her or bent them in a way so that they did fit you. No comment. I read that very differently from your text but can't say for sure since such things depend on how you perceive them. Enough said. How was your marriage in great shape when you openly admitted that your wife accused you of rape and you had to restrain her from attacking you, physically? Moreover, you both were looking outside your marriage before the polyamory conversation even came up. In addition to that, you're being shady with the deleting of messages with Melinda, and yeah, you technically showed her afterwards, but you still broke your commitment, and she's being flippant about what she agrees/disagrees with. Which leads to point 2. Your communication between each other does suck. You're here now because you couldn't be honest with your wife about the progression of you and Melinda's relationship and she can't be honest with you about her boundaries and expects you to read her mind, and this is off the back of a violent argument. It sucks, just be honest with yourself. I'm not gonna get into the rest because this is enough as it is, a disaster. I feel like your relationship died a long time ago and that you are desperately trying to keep it alive. You're like those pet owners that have a terribly sick dog but don't want to put it down when it's the only reasonable choice, because they are either selfish or are disillusioned or both. Mate, it's over, don't waste more time and just start again and remember the mistakes you made so you won't do them again. You knew how Janet felt about your relationships with other women after you deleted the conversations with Melinda, yet you went on and continued talking to other women. You don't get to be shocked and surprised that it hurts her. The thing is, you did agree to her seeing others as you took full advantage of. You just wanted monogamy after you got to explore. Now her interaction with a married man is completely not okay when his wife didn't know. Does she know the full extent of their relationship? If not, you need to inform her. This all came about because you had a very inappropriate friendship. But ultimately it sounds like you have unfortunately fallen victim to being one of the many that have their relationship ruined from opening up. I think it's time to call it. Janet doesn't seem interested in ending things with Wilson. She is likely getting all those good feelings you got during your others phase. So you can wait until she works this out of her system, or you can leave. But make it clear that Wilson's wife needs to give her full consent. I wanted to add further that my other phase was dark, the lowest season of my life. I didn't really have good feelings, but I do feel like my relationships at that time kept me out of the morgue, the hospital, or the psychiatric ward. And that's the death knell for any poly relationship. The primary, if you use those terms, should provide 90% or so of each other's needs, with the secondary making up the shortfall. Would you say that you were getting more out of the extra relationships than with your wife? Was she getting more on the outside herself? Where were the percentages honestly? This shortfall being made up should be something that is a suitable subject for a casual chat without any jealousy. It should have been fun to talk about. Neither of you were in this headspace. I don't care how dark it was. You knew it hurt your wife and you continued to do it. I continued to believe my wife when she said she wanted it for me. All I knew is that she kept telling me she was fine, so I acted in good faith that she meant it until it became clear she wasn't. After Melinda, Janet basically begged me to find someone else. It was a very dark season for me. I was metaphorically drowning and gasping for breath, and Janet made it very clear she was not able to help me. I agreed, and yes, it was fine with me that she had her side relationship. But I suppose that my fatal mistake was in thinking that when I swore off polyamorous relationships because of what they were doing to her, that she had also made the same choice and was happy to be the only woman in my life. I had thought for months that after her relationship ended, we would resume being fully monogamous, and that her healing moment was what we'd been waiting on for so long. I never expected that she would take up with someone new because of how closely we had nearly destroyed everything, and I was under the impression that we were getting back on track. Please don't take this as being critical. I empathize with your pain. It's not easy when you feel a relationship slipping away. Having read the rules, they are a list of don'ts. There is no emphasis on what good looks like. What was the vision of success? If there was one, how specific was it? If it was going off track, as it did, then there were no check steps to stop what happened. You also didn't agree between you what to do if it didn't work. No exit strategy, so closing the relationship would always be unplanned, up for debate for terms, and maybe not acceptable to one party. In a mono relationship, success is relatively easy to measure. The vision is clear, the trope of a white picket fence etc. exists. In poly, where you are writing your own rules, then you have to be very clear what success looks like, because you can't look outside for inspiration. True, you had some success before, but that was with a different person in the more carefree stage of your life, not after 15 years of monogamous marriage. Wilson is just the man of the moment that she's using to prove a point. Him being in a mono relationship should have ruled him out as a suitable partner. She doesn't care about him or the fact that she is destroying his marriage, albeit with his consent. TBF, he should not have stepped out of his marriage for NSA fun and deserves everything he gets from this SH show. She will eventually move to a more serious threat, a person that she can actually have a chance at a proper mono relationship with, and then she is gone. Unless you actually said we are done being poly, then it doesn't matter what you thought. You wanted poly and kept at it when you saw it hurt her. Kept giving her details when she said she didn't want it. You kept hurting her over and over without a care in the world. You still got your side pieces at the expense of your wife's mental health. You can't complain now that she is only doing what you wanted. You wanted poly so you could be with others. And it was all fine and dandy until she also wanted to exercise that right. As long as Wilson's wife is fully consenting to their relationship, there is nothing wrong here. Maybe Wilson is the only thing keeping her here. Maybe you did so much damage in your selfishness that she needs this. Either way, you are learning the hard way that poly ends monogamous relationships. They almost never last after opening up. Just to add, you destroyed everything here by wanting to be poly so you could have Melinda. You shouldn't have gotten so on to her being married. Especially if you started feeling something for her. This is all you're doing. While your wife also had an inappropriate friendship, you're the one that decided being poly was the right choice. And that's really when your marriage died. Polyamory gone wrong. Unbelievable. What could possibly go wrong with a plan for institutionalized unfaithfulness? I am exactly as surprised by this as I would be if I shot myself in the foot and found out that it hurt. The only person I feel bad for in this situation is your son. You should have separated from your wife the moment you had a physical altercation and she accused you of rape. Poor kid, both of his parents are selfish. Train wreck. Do yourself a favor and start some counseling to figure yourself out. Are you monogamous or are you poly? Only you can answer that question, and I think it's going to take a bit of soul searching on your part. Your wife has obviously moved her love and affection to another. Whatever your current relationship status is, it doesn't sound as if she's committed to you or your marriage, and I would separate, as hard as that may be to hear. There has to be two people in a marriage with love and mutual respect and a desire to keep the sanctity of the relationship. Does that sound remotely like where your wife is at this moment? You can't build a solid future on a foundation of slippery sand. I am poly, but committed to being monogamous, at least for the duration of this relationship, after seeing my wife suffering. I have said often, I am not willing to elevate my pleasure over someone else's pain. Yet that is exactly what you did. Which is exactly why I stopped as soon as I recognized it. I say bounce dude, it's sounding like this was already over a while back. Real genius right here. Yet can't see single example of flawed reasoning at all. Edit, just read parts 2 and 3. You're a real pos. I would tell Janet that you are no longer interested in staying married if she will love you and this marriage first. You are in a no-win situation. Sounds like Janet was over him a long time ago. I'm not sure what she's getting from this relationship at this point. Janet's best idea is that I return to polyamory and find new alternative companionship, which, theoretically is possible and makes sense, but it doesn't seem right to force me into it against my will just to allow her to justify her own actions. Best idea in this train wreck of a post. Go find a willing partner that is willing to put up with these layers of emotions and partners. My head is spinning. You seem like a bright, intellectual guy. This explains you finding poly literature on the internet, fully absorbing it, and deciding it fits you. The confusing part for me is that there seems to be another side of you that lacks common sense and self-awareness. It should have occurred to you that you were falling for Melinda and were looking for an excuse to cheat when you stumbled across the poly literature. It also should have occurred to you that the literature is designed to make you think positively of the lifestyle. It's not designed to make you go, this is fucking nuts and will absolutely destroy my marriage. Although, I suspect in your zeal to fulfill your desires you would have ignored any warnings anyway. Just based on your writing, it should be obvious to you that your wife was unhappy in the marriage before you even met Melinda, which led to her starting an EA with Kyle. This of course led to you giving her a really serious reason to be unhappy by suggesting poly so you could cheat and get away with it. Since it's clear you have a penchant for missing what's right in front of you, I'll help. Your wife never wanted to be poly. She still doesn't want to be poly. She wants a man who acts like he loves her, and in that, you failed by every measurable standard. Not only did you make this bed and deserve to lay in it, you also deserve the further consequences that are surely coming. 2. After that, I started writing and publishing on Instagram and found many people willing to listen to my pain, talk things through, and generally help me rebuild some sense of self-worth. I would tell my wife nightly of the people I was connecting with, the conversations we were having, and always asking how Janet felt about what I was doing and how she would feel if any of the conversations with these other women grew more racy. As always, Janet told me she was okay with me trying to find whatever I needed to get out of my funk and feel better. Again, months later, when more specific details came forth, that I had exchanged some salacious photos with someone who had requested them, Janet was again deeply hurt by the things she had said beforehand would not hurt her. She never wanted to know details, so I never described what sort of photos we were exchanging, but given the context, she should have been able to guess. Her agreement in advance was what I sought, and I provided enough information that I thought we were on the same page without giving her an amount of detail she would find distasteful. Towards the end of the others period, I connected well with a couple different friends and had a few teasing and flirtatious conversations with them. With one in particular, I had a few days of a very intense and affectionate relationship, before it became clear that it didn't make sense, wouldn't end well because I was unwilling to leave Janet for another woman, and we left it at that. It was also clear that I never should have accepted Janet at her word that she was fine with me connecting with other people, because every time, it ended in more pain. I concluded that she was incompatible with polyamory and decided to commit to a monogamous relationship with my wife and no longer pursue anything with anyone else. However, at that time, we entered another platonic phase in which Janet would not allow me to kiss her and would not say I love you to me. This stretched from mid-May to the end of August, by which point I had decided that I'd had enough. She came home talking about wanting to go on vacation to Mexico to meet up with Kyle, and I just packed a bag and left for a few days to sleep in our garden. After that, we began talking again and things got better for a few days, and then she left for Mexico. After she came back, the night before I left for a trip to attend my dad's memorial, she spent all evening talking about how she thought Kyle was being distant and she suspected that he thought she wanted Mexico to be a booty call. I left the next morning with the coldest, most emotionless hug goodbye I ever felt. When I came back, it took 2 months because of COVID, things were great again. Somehow while I was gone she had some conversation alone with a friend named Wilson, who is also married with kids, which ended with a healing moment involving some sort of hand-holding/squeeze that instantly dissolved her obsession and love for Kyle and restored her ability to love me. And although I understood this to mean that our relationship was restored as a married couple, I found out a week ago that she considers our relationship to have fully ended 2 years ago, and that we are currently still only friends with benefits, and despite knowing all the pain we both felt while exploring polyamory which ended with my rejection of it, she still feels like it's good for her to explore further. This is new information to me. You sound like you do more talking than listening. You certainly are not intuitive. 3. As the weeks have progressed since my return, I have observed a sharp increase in the amount of time she spends alone with Wilson, often late at night, for example between 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. I have asked about this many times and made my views known that I don't like it and don't think it's a good idea, but the frequency and intensity of their interactions have increased. My questions and inquiries have been answered most vaguely, and the concerns I voiced went unheeded. I found out last week that 2 weeks ago, they had kissed, possibly not for the first time. I was incredibly angry and sad about this. After taking some time to try and pinpoint why I was upset, I realized I should have known that the healing moment was not marriage restoration. I should have known that we were still only friends with benefits to her. I should have known that sometime after I had sworn it off, Janet was either still interested or had become interested in a polyamorous relationship. I should have known in advance that there were growing feelings between them, that there was a desire and a potential to create an opportunity for a kiss to happen. These things always seem to just happen somehow. As an affected party, I should have been invited into a 3 or 4-way conversation to establish agreements, boundaries, and to affirm consent from all affected. I should never have the feeling I'm being lied to, that there is any deception or concealment, and especially if I ask questions or raise concerns, they should be clearly answered and addressed, not dodged and dismissed. All this time, they had been sneaking around, hiding their growing feelings from both of their spouses. Wilson's wife was only told because I found out, although they say they were going to tell us and that Janet had wanted to tell me for a few weeks but had not found the right opportunity. Things started to make sense, thinking back on several occasions the past month when I asked if there was something developing between them and got vague and unsatisfactory answers in response, etc. There were too many unusual occasions that I found them together, but they had kept trying to play it off as though they were just really close platonic friends. In the ensuing conversations after the truth came out, they both apologized to me, saying they thought it was all in accord with the agreement I have with Janet. Which leaves me baffled because I never made an agreement, generally or specifically. At this point, they both seem to have every intention of continuing. I said I can be good with sharing her soul, but I can't get behind sharing her body. This stance is probably somewhat reactionary based on the betrayal I felt at finding out they had kissed without me even being aware/formally told that they even have feelings for each other. Janet seems annoyed that I would dare limit her freedom and wants to have my full permission for her to do anything and everything with Wilson. I have said that I cannot make either of them conform to my demands, nor do I desire to. All I can do is to clearly articulate what I want, ask them to do the same, and start figuring out how to move forward. In the same way, all I can do is to clearly articulate my deal breakers, and hope they can operate within my boundaries, and if not, I guess it's time to pull the plug. I realize this is not the usual conventional scenario in this subreddit, but didn't know where else to turn. I feel cheated on, even though it was only a kiss or two. It violated my principles of asking spousal permission in advance, as well as not sneaking around, and yet I recognize that on a few different levels, I made my bed and now must sleep in it. At this point, because they both seem intent on having a full-blown affair, I feel like I've done all I can do to try and restore my marriage. We don't seem to both want the same outcome and see no path forward where we can all be happy and get what we want. Janet's best idea is that I return to polyamory and find new alternative companionship, which, theoretically is possible and makes sense, but it doesn't seem right to force me into it against my will just to allow her to justify her own actions. It's never only a kiss. It is entirely likely that magical moment that broke her infatuation with Kyle did not involve holding hands but uniting genitals. Your wife stopped loving you and considering you her husband in the truest sense of that word most likely exactly when she told you that she had. All the rest of the awfulness between you, including a ridiculous dip into polyamory, was the both of you not dealing with all the problems and hurt feelings and hiding behind this other thing because it let you both do what you wanted without having to pull the plug on the relationship. Far too many people go to ridiculous extremes trying to save a marriage that truly needs to end. I was on your side until this part. You're willing to share your wife's literal soul but not her body? Are you hearing yourself, man? It sounds like you pushed her into agreeing to something she didn't want to, and when she finally gives it a go for herself you have second thoughts and backpedal. She doesn't sound like a prize either, she sounds high maintenance and neurotic. You'll need therapy and probably a divorce. Correct me if I'm wrong, but you also expressed to your wife earlier that you thought you could be okay with her having sex with someone. I get that she wasn't open or upfront about her feelings and or level of intimacy, but you are definitely changing your expectations or moving the goalposts now. She has found someone she would like to explore a physical relationship with. TBH, you should have gone to therapy with Janet the moment you realized she was saying yes to poly but was deeply upset by your agreed other relationships. You said to yourself she kept saying yes but you realized afterwards she meant no. I'm honestly not sure if this is now savable. You clearly both feel you have been betrayed. But in order to reconcile you both need to want to, and TBH it doesn't sound like either of you do. It sounds like Janet was hiding stuff from the start. The difference is, you discussed your actions and tried to come to a resolution. Janet avoided the problem until she decided to use it to her advantage. If you look at her relationship with the other guy, you'll find it was not how she portrayed it. You should plan to move on with your life. What was the fight about? Was this the first time you had fought to that extreme? I see you post a lot about drug usage. How big of a problem was drugs in your relationship? The fight was about me giving some leftover date cream dip to our neighbors which she wanted for herself/us, and she demanded I go over and get it back. We hardly ever fight, and it almost never turns physical. This event was really an anomaly. Drugs were never really a problem. I've been drug-free nearly all my life, but she got me a joint for Father's Day last year, and so we started semi-regularly with cannabis, which we both felt was an enormous blessing to us. Not long after that, a friend gave me a legal variant of LSD which I really enjoyed and derived a lot of value from, and we've been talking about opening something like a psychedelic day spa, so I've been educating myself. Best bet is that you find someone to engage in a relationship type of relationship with, and see how you feel from there. She is obviously happy with her newfound lover, and there is no way you can stop this from happening. If you do find someone else that you become equally happy with, then you might be looking at this situation differently. Maybe then you would not oppose to sharing her body. I agree with you, maybe, I just don't want to be forced into it by her. I guess I place too much emphasis on the idea that we come to an agreement before acting. I don't know how old your son is, but he should never have had to witness violence between his parents and even having to seek help at your direction, and after reading your whole story and all of the comments, I'm willing to bet that this was not the first time he witnessed or was aware of loud arguments at the very least, and probably violence/disturbing behavior between the two people he loves most in the world and whose job it is to protect him and raise him in an atmosphere where he can thrive. Starting with that fight, your son has witnessed and been constantly affected by the immorality and immaturity of his parents, neither of whom seems to have any idea of how to behave within the framework of a marriage, and your son has surely been deeply impacted and needs therapy so he can now understand how responsible, loving people do treat one another and handle problems, because he needs those tools, and the two of you have set him back in his emotional development. I'm generally a person who doesn't like to make moral judgments. I understand that people have difficulties in life and we are usually all doing our best, but in this crazy situation you ran the readers of your post through. How you or your wife manage or feel is hard to care about. The only thing I'm taking away from this whole SHT show is that you have very negatively impacted your son. This will deeply affect his life, and you need to step up and be the parents he deserves by seeking help for him and by never exposing him to your crazy adult problems again. You have given him reason to want to be as far away from this mess as possible once he's old enough. You owe him every benefit available to help him to grow into a well-adjusted adult who can have successful relationships in the future. You went poly because you were already cheating. That was never gonna work. Is there a question in any of this? I fundamentally disagree with your assessment. I had confusing and conflicting emotions about the sudden depth of connection with someone new in my life, and had an open and honest conversation with my wife about how I was feeling and how best to deal with it. We hope you have enjoyed today's episode. Please comment, like and subscribe. Cheers. Have a wonderful day or night, wherever you are.